Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So good morning, namaste. Welcome to the Saturday morning class on Swami Prabhavananda's Realizing God. We're reading and discussing his talk, Mysticism and Mystic Visions, or Superconsciousness. And before we begin with that, are there any comments or questions, anything left over from before, or anything at all that you'd like to ask or add? All right. Let me point out the difference between hallucinations, delusion, and spiritual visions. There is a saying in the Bible, "Ye shall know a tree by its fruits." Hallucinations weaken the brain, and the character is not transformed. Delirium is from a diseased brain. But when spiritual visions come, the effect is a stamp on the character. It is transformed. Love, compassion, sympathy, devotion arise in the heart, as does self-control. Now, why is that? Why do these things happen? Let me read again what the Swami says. When spiritual visions come, the effect is a stamp on the character. It is transformed. Love, compassion, sympathy, devotion arise in the heart, as does self-control. The reason is very simple. These already exist within us. These attributes, these aspects of ourselves, of ourself, SELF, capital S, these aspects of ourself are already present. And so that's what he means by arise. Arise in the heart. It's as if there's an artesian spring that has been uncapped. And so these things arise, as does self-control. Self-control, why is it easier for self-control? Because you're less drawn to those things. Because these other aspects of yourself have arisen, you're less drawn to the things that require your self-control. Any comments or questions on that particular aspect? Anything to offer from your own wisdom or anything that you'd like to add or ask?
I totally agree with you, Brother Shankara, on that subject.
Very
Definitely,
good.
definitely, it does happen, but it takes time to get there.
Well, we don't get the visions
Sure.
until we've done spiritual practice for some time.
Exactly.
We don't get the key is not turned in the lock
Mm-hmm.
until we've practiced for some time.
That is
Then the treasure chest is opened,
opened, right?
and these things arise. Thank you, Harma.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
All right. I have often heard, this is the Swami again now, I have often heard that mysticism is escapism. But suppose the house is on fire. Won't you try to escape? This is the escape from suffering and misery to reach the domain where there is no night, but only light and bliss. Now listen to this promise. Won't you try to escape? This is the escape from suffering and misery to reach that domain where there is no night, but only light and bliss. This can be a reality for each of us. Psychologically speaking, this is yoga psychology. Psychologically speaking, a human being is spirit, capital S. Psychologically speaking, a human being is spirit encased in sheaths, physical, subtle, and causal. These are the koshas. We'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow morning. These sheaths are a creation of the Atman for its own purposes, says Sri Krishna in the Gita. This is part of Sankhya philosophy. So the Swami goes on, fundamentally, therefore, each one of us is a spiritual being because our true nature is the indwelling God. Now, just as we consist of sheaths, similarly, Brahman is encased in sheaths, physical, subtle, and causal. A seer experiences this physical universe as Brahman everywhere. A seer, that is to say, an awakened one, experiences this physical universe as Brahman everywhere. When you see clay dolls of many different kinds and forms, you know it is all clay, only the names and forms are different. Of course, this is a metaphor for us as human beings. When you see clay dolls of many different kinds and forms, you know it is all clay, only the names and forms are different. The clay, of course, is Brahman, encased in the physical, subtle, and causal sheaths. There is another kind of experience brought out in the Mundaka Upanishad. Quote, heaven is his head, the sun and moon his eyes, the four quarters his ears, the revealed scriptures his voice, the air his breath. Heaven is his head, the sun and moon his eyes, the four quarters his ears, the revealed scriptures his voice, the air his breath. Unquote. Try to feel that you are breathing the breath of God. Quote, again from the Mundaka. The universe is his heart. The universe, his heart. From his feet came the earth. He is the innermost self of all. So beyond all name and form, beyond time, space, and causation, that innermost self is the divine presence or Brahman. Anything at all to add or ask from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Fred.
Yes, Fred.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Could you just briefly tell maybe what physical, subtle, and causal sheaths are, just real quick? It'd be really helpful for me. Sorry.
The physical sheaths of a human being, and for that matter, a Brahman, but let's just talk about the human being first. The physical sheaths are your food body, this gross outer body, and the immediate energy, the prana body. This is called the Annamaya kosha, the food body, the outer body that we see. The energy that is evident to us, is called prana. So it's the pranamaya kosha. Those are the two physical sheaths. Then the three subtle sheaths. The mind, the intellect, and the ego. These are the three sheaths that are said to transmigrate. Along with the causal sheath, the causal sheath is sometimes identified with the ego or the intellect, all mixed up together. It's very clear in Sankhya, but it becomes less clear in yoga psychology. These are what, when you lose your physical sheaths, if you are not fully illumined and have chosen to keep your subtle sheaths, you will lose your physical sheaths. And if you are compelled to take a form again by your desires, continued desires for experience, it is those three other sheaths that transmigrate, that are the core of the new form that is being taken. This causal body, this causal sheath, which, as I said, is sometimes spoken of also as the ego, remembering that there is only one, truly only one ego, but nevertheless it appears reflected in us as this small self-ego. That which animates us, that spiritual being, of course, is the indwelling spirit. That is the causal force. But its reflection in form, name and form, is called the causal body. Does that get it, Fred, or is there a need for more?
Yeah, I don't want to take us off track. I just need
No, this is fine. This is exactly what we should be doing.
Okay, thank you.
This is what a class is. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
good morning, Jama.
Good morning.
You described very beautifully just now that capital, that spiritual being is a causal force, and the representation, or I'm saying the manifestation, is the causal body. If you could say a few more sentences on this, I would really appreciate it. So to bring home to me, if more feeling for what the causal really is that we revere so much.
We can't express the causal. The indwelling spirit is beyond thought and speech. But here is how it's spoken of in the evening prayer. Speech cannot hold thee, or mind. Speech cannot hold thee nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. In other words, the causal cannot be thought of or spoken of, but it is the motive power for our ability to think and speak. That is the causal body. It can't be described. We can talk about it as saguna atman, the witness self that witnesses what we do, and as is said in chapter 13 of the Gita, thereby sanctions what we do, and is the reason that we do these things. But that's about all we can say about it. So the causal is beyond thought and speech. Its effects are all of the other sheaths, especially the subtle ones. The gross ones, the physical ones, are more a result of our prarabdha karma. Does that get it?
Thank you, Brother Shankara. That was very good for me. And when we speak of quote unquote sanctions what we do, this raises a question in my mind, which I'll use some word which would be controversial. Sanctions what we do, whatever I do right, and when I make mistakes, everything is sanctioned by the same power. Now,
Yes, there is only that one power. Read chapter 13 of the Gita. Read the field and its knower, and you'll see that the divine is the author of everything. What seems to us mistakes is just another form of experience for the indwelling spirit.
Yeah.
The indwelling spirit is beyond right and wrong, good and evil. Those are ideas that we hold in our left mind. Of course, they govern our behavior. They govern society's behavior. But as it is said, when you achieve realization, you become as an expert dancer. You cannot put a foot wrong, or you become as an expert singer. You cannot sing a wrong note. Now, this is not something that can be rationalized. It cannot be brought to heel, so to speak, in our left mind. It's something to be experienced. Anything more, Vijay?
Thank you very much for giving me this time. And I ask myself and test myself from time to time by raising a question within me. How quickly, as I'm walking on the road and the people passing by, how quickly am I able to feel as if there's Brahman in everyone? That is my test of, am I getting more evolved or not? Or am I looking at the people passing by me as physical bodies and not thinking in my mind of the Brahman within? I don't know if that sounds kind of like crazy or what, but somehow I go for walks and I end up testing myself. Where am I at now?
Well, this is manana. This is taking these ideas into our mind and comparing our present behavior with the ideal. Well and good. But we cannot will ourselves to see those other people as Brahman. We can take a stand for it. We can say, I believe it's so. I will try to act as if it's so. This is all manana. But it's only through when we finally become convinced that our lower ideas are inauspicious and these higher ideas are auspicious, and we focus on them again and again and again, insisting, that is, taking a stand for, insisting on the truth of them, finally this breaks through. And then we see it. Then we experience it. But it's very good to do what you just described. This is manana. This is comparing our present way of behaving, seeing people as bodies passing by, with the ideal, which is seeing Brahman in everything and everyone. But it's not something we can will to happen. Patanjali is very explicit about this. We can do all the preparation, but then samadhi, wherein these experiences occur within us and then we can see them outside of us as well, is something that happens to us.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. This lecture is extremely meaningful for me. I will be listening to it, the recording afterwards again to digest more, and I may have more questions afterwards. At this time, I want to, of course, express my gratitude to you to bring this difficult point home about the causal body as you did today. And second, in Upanishads, so many places I have come across the four quadrants. I have not understood what the four quadrants really mean. Of course, there's a north, south, east, west, etc. Is there?
Well, just imagine those extending to infinity, which is beyond our ability to grasp, of course. But the four quarters, as discussed in the Mundaka and other places, they're not limited by our earthbound experience. It's meant to try to have us understand everywhere and forever, which is very difficult.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone? That, by the way, this is exactly the kind of discussion that should be about these points that the Swami is making. Anything else from anyone?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Yes, Bala.
I just wonder, it just reminded me something from the Kaivalya Upanishad. Actually, they give the example of a mirage, and they say an ignorant person goes after the mirage for water, whereas a realized person, he also sees the mirage as it is, but he doesn't run after for water. So
I'll message you the list.
Somebody
Class
needs
will.
to, somebody
क्योंकि
needs
एक
to
खड़ा हो
mute
गया सीढ़ियों
themselves.
पे
Somebody needs to mute themselves. We're not hearing Balakrishna. Please say it again, Bala.
now, you see, in the Kaivalya Upanishad, they describe this with a mirage, because for a ignorant person who, he sees a mirage and he goes after for water.
Yes.
As a realized sage, he sees the mirage, but he doesn't go for water for that one. So this is an understanding that, as long as we are, this is the understanding. I thought that was a good example to keep it in my mind.
Good. Excellent. Yes, that's fine. This idea of a mirage is a very old metaphor. Vashishta uses it. If any of us who's ever seen a mirage of water, seemingly this great body of water at a distance, those who have knowledge know that there's no water there, so they don't, as you say, go after it. And that has metaphorical implications for all of the rest of what appears to us. Thank you, Balaji. Anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to say very quickly, I really have appreciated this discussion because I struggle every day to see every other person as the divine presence and the one Brahman. So thank you all for your sharing your experience.
Well, thank you, Aaron, and good for you. Or as the Aussies say, good on you, mate. Anybody else? Anything? All right. This Swami again. Now again, we experience the physical universe with our ordinary five senses: hearing, touch, smell, taste, sight. Similarly, when we rise to the psychic plane, there is sound, smell, sight, and so on. You can hear a sound, taste something, see some light. This is still within time, space, and causation. These are psychic phenomena. So he says there are the physical phenomena. There's also the psychic plane. There is sound, smell, sight, and so on. You can hear a sound, taste something, and see some light. Not only that, powers may come to you. For instance, clairvoyance or clairaudience, or reading the thoughts of others. Patanjali says the psychic powers may be obtained either by birth or by means of drugs, or by power of words, special mantras, or by the practice of austerities, or by concentration. Drugs can give psychic power or vision momentarily, but the effect, if continued, is that the brain becomes completely deranged. Beware. So the Swami was often delivered these lectures during the time when drugs were so popular, the 60s and 70s and so on. They're still popular, but differently, so to speak. The brain becomes completely deranged. And by the by, I have actually witnessed this. This is not just something the Swami is saying. I have seen what was seemingly a sane and stable husband become something entirely different through taking psychedelics. So beware. A spiritual aspirant tries to avoid psychic powers. My master taught me that even if you are not seeking psychic powers, if you are simply meditating and counting your beads and trying to pray to God for love, devotion, and knowledge, you may suddenly feel a power in you. Here's the Swami's instruction if this happens to you. And don't be surprised if it does, if you practice diligently. Try it once to test its validity, but never try a second time. If you do not try anymore, you lose that power. And in another place, the Swami once said, was asked, why try it? He says, well, if you don't, you'll be forever curious about what it is. So try it, test its validity, then let it go. And if you don't water it with your attention, it will slowly lose its vitality. Patanjali also points out that these are powers in the worldly sense, but obstacles on the spiritual path. They are temptations. Do not trust anyone who shows such occult powers. Any comments or questions about that?
So how do you like people who have these powers, these spiritual powers, like they seem very like ego-centered the way you're talking about.
They're not spiritual powers, Aaron.
Okay.
They're psychic powers. Let's draw that line in the sand and paint it bright red. These are not spiritual powers. The spiritual power manifests those things that the Swami mentioned earlier: compassion, love, sympathy, all of these wonderful aspects of human beings. As you said, those people who do show these occult powers tend to be egocentric. The reason they are holding on to those powers is they want power over others. So that's how you can tell them. They want something from you. Any other comments or questions about that?
Brother Shankara,
Yes?
I'm not even sure if those certain people actually have those powers, or they have found a way to make others feel that they have the powers. I have come across on 2 or 3 occasions some people that I had to remind myself at that time to indeed stay away from them. And I had the feeling after hearing their lectures, one of those lectures happened to be one at a respectable place like a theater at Emory many years ago. So I'm not even sure if they're trying to really impress people and then attract people to come to the cult that they are already in themselves.
Well, yes, some people practice magic, which is not psychic power. They practice magic to make you think that they can read your thoughts and so on. Uh, as I said, the way to tell people that you might want to beware of is that they want something from you. They want your allegiance, they want your money, they want your time, they want something. So if they show off these powers, and again, I highly recommend for all of us to read Swami Vivekananda's his talk, Powers of the Mind, because he made it his business to seek out people who really did have these powers and see if they were true, see if they actually did, or whether they were just practicing magic. And he relates those stories in that talk.
Thank you very much for the guidance in terms of what these people are looking for, what they are after.
Yes.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swam.
So sometimes, I mean, I presume that by drugs, the Swami is referring to the strong, like the psychedelic drugs and so on. My question was more to do with like medications, like if someone takes medications for, say, depression, anxiety, bipolar, or whatever, how would that interfere with the spiritual practice? Or how does one then know that if they, because part of the spiritual practice is to gain control over your emotions. So how do we then know that the medications are not what's kind of doing the thing, and like how do we weigh the progress that we are making through the spiritual process? I don't know if that's a confusing question, but
Dear heart, you are an MD. You know perfectly well that medications that are properly created and certified have identifiable effects. They may have off-label effects as well, but they have identifiable effects. People who take medications for bipolar, for anxiety, for depression, these are physical manifestations. They may be a physical manifestation of a kind of karma, but they're physical manifestations. They're not psychic, and they're certainly not spiritual. So it does not interfere with their spiritual progress. It helps them, these medications help them become more stable so that they can practice regularly. Spiritual practice, what happens to us spiritually, is only tangentially related to these psychic and physical aspects. But we can only achieve these results if we're able to practice regularly. So it's not, there's nothing whatsoever suspect or wrong about taking psychologically efficacious medications. Now, people who are very severely ill, like schizophrenia and so on, like this, they probably will never achieve enough stability, even though they take their medications. They'll probably never achieve enough stability to do regular spiritual practice. But people who suffer from these other conditions, the ones you specifically mentioned, bipolar, anxiety, depression, these are controllable by medications, and people are able to generate enough stability that they're able to do their spiritual practices.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. That's very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Brother Shankara, so this reminds me of one of the talk I was listening from Ram Dass, that when he met Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba.
Mm-hmm.
So Neem Karoli Baba told him that told him about his mother, which he saw a day before. I don't know if you have heard of that story. So is that also not using the psychic power, or that's something different?
A realized soul
Mm-hmm.
is going to have complete mastery of waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. They are going to have these abilities, but they don't exploit them. They don't ask anything of anyone, but they may use them for their own purposes. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that he could see into people like seeing into a glass case. He could just see their past, present, and future, their whole being. He could see like seeing the dishes inside a glass case. He also had the ability to heal. And he was asked, why don't you heal? He said, if I did, this place would be overwhelmed. It would become a hospital. It would become a clinic. And I would not be able to do the work that I'm here to do. So yes, Neem Karoli Baba. There are wonderful stories by Ram Dass and others of his disciples about his one time 26 of his disciples hired a bus in the morning, and through a series of misadventures, they finally found their way to Neem Karoli Baba's ashram and found that there was exactly 26 meals prepared for them. And when Ram Dass asked Neem Karoli Baba about it, or maybe it was Krishna Das, I don't remember. Anyway, one or the other of them asked Neem Karoli Baba about it. He said, oh yes, this morning I told the cook to prepare 26 meals. So, and that you would be coming. So, but we cannot judge the actions of illumined souls, period, let alone by the standards of our experience of society and the world of time, space, and causation. They are beyond it. And all of the testimony, whether you read it in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, or whether you read it in the Rasa Leela of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan, or Neem Karoli Baba, or what? These beings are beyond our understanding, let alone our judgment.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
is there a book or any where else that you suggest we can read some of these stories about Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba?
Oh, dear, just Google it. I don't know any of these books.
Or Suresh Batra may be having, I don't know. So maybe.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
you can contact Somesh if you wish. But
Okay,
the thing to do is just Google Neem Karoli Baba and see what pops up. I'm
okay,
sure that there'll be some ads from Amazon about books,
okay,
about him.
okay. Thank you.
But I've never read any.
Yeah, I just YouTube and I found.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did on YouTube. That's how I found those.
Somesh, thank you so much.
You're
Anyone
welcome.
else, dears?
The fascinating thing about what Ramdas said about Neem Karoli Baba is he said he knew every aspect of his being, but he would only share the greatest aspects of Ramdas's being with him. He would never share anything of what he saw as his dark side, so to speak.
Well, he didn't even care about his dark side. All he cared was to open up his bright side. As long as we are within time, space, and causation, there's going to be bright and dark. The masters don't care at all about our mistakes, our falls. They see the dark spots in us, and instead of addressing the dark spots, they shine a bright light. And that illumines all of those spots.
That's beautiful, Brother Shankara. Thank you.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, dear.
someday, if time permits, if you are able to have one session on the ageless, timeless, time, space, and causation, just those three words, time, space, and causation. And it would help wrap up so much that we hear from you from time to time in one capsule. And personally, I'll find it very beneficial for me, of course.
All right. One way or another, we'll address that request.
The second comment I wanted to mention was about the word judgment we used a while ago. Of course, it's not only about judgment, our judgment of the holy people, just the opposite. And I'm speaking for myself. I have to guard myself every single day, all the time, where my mind is. Is it in any place of judgment just because I'm hearing anything or I'm reading something? To be aware of the judgmental part of what my brain is doing.
Well, Vijay, I hope you don't feel as if you're the Lone Ranger there. We all have that. We all have a left mind. We all have a left brain consciousness. Its job is to process the incoming information and to tell us it knows exactly what's so, box it up, and make it like I don't have to deal with it anymore because I know what that is.
Mm.
We all have that. So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and saying that you have this experience, but we all do. As long as we're embodied, we have this left brain limbic system, and we have this left brain cortex that is constantly busy trying to convince us that it knows what's what and judging things. And it constantly needs to be gently but firmly restrained from taking charge of everything. So just exactly what you're saying, that you're on your mettle, that you're being aware that this left brain is doing this. We all have that. And if you want to know about this from the perspective of the artists, you can see it in visual art. You can see it especially in the poets and the singers. They're always singing and talking about those things.
Thank you very much.
I'm a little confused about this, what Vijay just said about judgment. I mean, what is the right application of applying the judgment? In what cases it is good and what cases it's not good? I mean,
When we apply it appropriately, dear, it's called discrimination.
okay.
And
Okay,
discrimination is made of two things. What deserves my attention? That's first. And then secondly, am I allowing myself to be drawn to the pleasant, or am I using my spiritual energy to encourage myself toward the good? This is fundamental to Raja Yoga, the discrimination between the pleasant and the good, and the choice of the good. Because the pleasant will keep us at best on a level plane, but slowly and slowly, if we indulge in the pleasant and don't use our spiritual power to encourage ourselves toward the good, the situation will degrade slowly and slowly. Whereas if we do the opposite and we encourage ourselves toward the auspicious, the good, then slowly and slowly things will improve. Spiritually, psychically, and physically. Though the body will age, that's a given. But what happens to you spiritually and psychically, neither of those two things ages.
okay. Thank you for making it clear, because I was confusing between discrimination and judgment. I mean,
Yes. Judgment is, here's what judgment is. Judgment is looking at something, thinking you understand what it is, putting in that box of your limited left brain understanding and saying, now I know what that is. I have it in a box and I don't have to deal with it anymore. I'll just simply refer to that box whenever I encounter it. And which of course is completely unresponsive to the unending diversity, flexibility, and constant change of the universe. We cannot box up the infinite or any of its manifestations and have that be in any way a permanent situation. We simply can't. It is, in terms of time, space, and causation, universe, it is always relative. What was good yesterday will be bad today and vice versa.
okay, yeah.
Because the situation has changed.
Exactly. Thank you.
This is why dogma and all those manifestations of rigidity led Hafiz to write that poem, Tiny Gods. And I highly recommend to anyone reading Hafiz's poem, Tiny Gods. It's in the book, Love Poems from God, and you may be able to find it elsewise.
Okay.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Swayam.
So I just wanted to share a personal example yesterday of how I was judged and how I reacted. This was my older sibling, just a couple of years older than me, that remarked on a certain quality that she said was because I was the youngest and pampered by 9 older siblings. And it was a very complimentary thing. And of course, I could not apply the 90-second rule, and I got angry and I responded in kind, and my physiological, everything, my blood pressure went up. And later on, as I calmed down and I was thinking, I could have responded differently. From a spiritual thing is that there is no older and younger. I mean, you are me, I'm you. So if you find that in me, you have that too. I mean, I felt like I could have responded a bit more with humor or calmness, but at that time I just went back to my reptilian brain. But the spiritual thinking at least helped me to recenter a little bit faster than I might have done in the past.
Good. And all of that, don't give it another thought except to take from whatever lesson you can. As Swami Swahananda used to say, what's done is done, go forward. And including in the go forward is take whatever we can from these lessons, these apparent mistakes. But it was something you just said about this in exchange, about the other person, when they're pointing something out in us. As there's a wonderful saying in the 12-step programs, AA and so on. If you spot it, you got it. If you spot it, you got it. And so I love that. Yes, indeed. As Goethe put it, more poetically, but and powerfully perhaps, a person sees in the world what they carry in their heart. And so this is what we're taught by the Swamis and others. Just don't react. When someone accuses you of something, just don't react. But when we do in the moment, as you say you did, so that's what happened. What happens to all of us. Even the Swamis. Swami Vivekananda was one time, he was saying something about some spiritual teaching and so on. And Swami Vijnanananda, who was just very young at the time, made some objection. And he made it in such a way that it seemed, that he just was insulting Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda began to get red in the face, and you could tell his fuse had been lit and he was about to go off. And Swami Premananda or Turiyananda, whichever it was that was with him at the time, said, "Oh, Swamiji, why pay any attention to this? This is just a boy. What does he know?" And Vivekananda calmed down. But there were many, many times when Vivekananda did not calm down. He was of a very fiery temperament. And he would bring others to tears by his excoriations.
Thank you.
We can't judge ourselves by these people like Vivekananda, but we can say, oh, well, at least in this, I'm like them.
Was this monks that other monks that like Vivekananda would have these experiences with?
Sometimes, even Brahmananda, even his brother disciple Brahmananda. He brought Brahmananda to tears. Brahmananda rushed in order not to react. He rushed to his room. And Vivekananda later went to Brahmananda's room and begged his forgiveness for being so abusive.
Brother Shankara,
Yes?
I also have heard that Swamis, when they use or when they show anger, they are trying to use it for a meaningful purpose to help the disciple. What's your thought on that?
Well, we've all heard this, of course, PJ. And it may well be true. The thing for us to do is not try to judge. Just accept what we've been given as a corrective and not try to judge whether the Swami was doing it out of genuine anger or whether he was doing it on purpose. As General George Patton was once said, General, you know, your subordinates don't know when you're really angry or whether you're just using the anger to correct them. And Patton said, it's not important for them to know. It's only important for me to know.
Thank you.
And Brother Shankara, in fact, if I see my life, I do the same with my son. Like, you know, sometimes I show anger, sometimes I get angry. And the idea is that if it helped him through, or if it caused more upset in him, to be responsible for it, whatever, whatever result it caused. Sometimes, showing anger did not work the way I expected it to. So the idea is to be responsible for it. Right?
Yes. Well, the thing for us to keep in mind, so firmly in mind, is that as each moment passes and we've gone into the next moment, we have the choice of looking backwards toward that past moment and distracting ourselves from the reality, the ideal, by thinking about that past moment, or whether we can just go forward, as Swami Swahananda said, by using the present moment to refocus ourselves on the reality, the ideal, as we know it, understand it, and practice it. It's almost never of any use whatsoever to look backwards with recrimination. We may look backwards with fondness because this helps us focus on love, compassion, empathy, sympathy, so on. But don't distract yourself with recrimination. Take from it what you can and move on. The present moment has plenty in it for us to focus on. The past, untrue or true as I recall it, what does it matter now? All that became this moment, this crouching, pregnant moment. The past, untrue or true as I recall it, what does it matter now? All that became this moment, this crouching, pregnant moment. So we'll leave it there. It's a little afternoon. We'll pick it up next week from the Swami talking about Patanjali and Swami Vivekananda. Any final thought from anyone?
Brother Shankara, I just wanted to make a note that about time, space, and causation. It is on YouTube also. Of course, your lecture would be wonderful, but it says Advaita Vedanta, time, space, and causation. There is a little
Oh, yes,
lecture.
there's.
It's Neera and Vijay wants.
Thank you, Neera.
Just wanted to mention.
Thank you, Haima. Thank you,
Sure.
Haima. Yes,
Sure.
there's all kinds of information out there about time, space, and causation. And I think most of you have heard me recommend a documentary film called Everything and Nothing. If you're interested in the scientific explanation of time, space, and causation, of the universe as the astrophysicists understood it as of 2016, this is an absolutely compelling and wonderful film. Beautifully organized, beautifully told, narrated, and illustrated. Everything and nothing. And it is all about time, space, and causation.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
I know you'd mentioned about this one, the documentary film. I tried to go on YouTube, but I could not find, there were so many.
Oh, it's not,
similar-
you won't find it on YouTube, dear.
Okay.
You'll have to find it elsewhere. I don't think you can find it for free on YouTube.
Found it
if
on
you have
Amazon Prime.
If you have Amazon Prime, it's there for free. And I'm not suggesting you get Amazon Prime for the purpose, but there are probably other places that you can access it.
Okay.
I don't know what they are because I do have Amazon Prime and that's where I've watched it.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you, Haima. Yes, I'm sure there are some
Sure,
wonderful Advaita explanations of time, space, and causation.
Sure, Brother Shankara. So much.
But time, space, and causation, from our perspective, of the spiritual aspirants present with us this afternoon now, time, space, and causation is the appearance, the skin, the physical and subtle aspects of the divine presence. Saguna Brahman. That's the thing to really understand about time, space, and causation. And the physicists are busily, astrophysicists and other kinds, are busily deconstructing what they already know and constructing better understandings. That's the glory of science. It's the glory of spiritual practice as well. We replace lower samskaras with higher samskaras, and higher samskaras with yet higher samskaras, until finally we come to the end, as we'll discuss tomorrow. We come to the end of the need for any samskaras.
Brother Shankar, speaking
Yes.
of time, space, and causation, my specific need really is to hear from you, because I know the way you put all of these thoughts together for us is different from what I find from the perspective of a physicist or a scientist, etc. So my inclination in asking you or requesting you is more from putting it all in a Vedantic capsule for us one day.
Well, I can't do the one without the other, because we'll talk about both together, and I don't know just when that will be, but I've made the promise, and it will happen at some point.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Hari Om Shankaraji, couple of,
Yes.
there was one book by, Ramdas called
Ye-
Das Bodha. That is the spiritual discourses between master and the listener.
That's Ramdas speaking with
Yeah.
Neem Karoli Baba.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
the title
I
of the
haven't
book
read that
again?
book, but that book is there, yes.
The title of the book is
Das Bodha, DASBODH.
Das Bod.
Yeah, Das Bodh.
Okay. Is it in English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I saw that book in the center one time.
Okay. Oh no, that's not Neem Karoli Baba. That book is about Nisargadatta's guru. I thought I recognized that title. That's not about Neem Karoli Baba. That's about Nisargadatta's guru. And that book is still around here. Yeah, I haven't read it at all, but it's not about Neem Karoli Baba.
The other thing I just wanted to bring it as one of the most difficult quality we should aspire and try to develop is samatvam, because that goes right from the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna says samatvam is one of the quality we have to try to develop, but it's the most difficult quality. But we should.
Please translate it into English. What does that mean?
Samatvam is the equanimity.
Oh, same-sidedness. Yes.
Yes.
Same-sidedness. Yes, of course. But this is in the last chapter. I'll give you an example. There is a woman, her name when she was embodied was Sister Gargi or Marie Louise Burke. She wrote the New Discovery series of books about Swami Vivekananda. She also wrote a biography of Swami Ashokananda, which the name is escaping me just this moment. But in any event, she was a remarkably good writer. And she was also one of the people who funded and helped purchase and start Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely, that place that Vivekananda spent 14 weeks in the mid-Hudson Valley. I was once accompanying her back from a visit to Ridgely, and we were in the Newark airport, and very uncharacteristically of her, she was normally very indrawn, very quiet in crowded situations. But this day she was sitting upright, alert, looking all around her. And finally, I couldn't help myself. I said, Gargi, what in the world are you doing? This is so unlike you. And she said very simply, very straightforwardly, oh, I'm practicing same-sidedness. And so I said, well, tell me what you mean. And she said, well, I'm doing my best to see the divine in every one of these people. Because as you know, in an airport, when you're sitting there in a big waiting room in the airport, there's every kind of person in every state of dress, every state of awareness, people who are wide awake, alert, people who are half asleep, people who are dead on their feet. So this was Sister Gargi, who was a nun of the San Francisco convent, practicing same-sidedness. She was also an heiress. This is why she was one of the people who helped fund the purchase of Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely. And that's another recommendation, by the way. Any of you who have an opportunity, please at some time go on retreat to Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely, which is about 75 miles north of New York, on the west bank of the Hudson in a little village called Stone Ridge. Swami Vivekananda spent a total of 14 weeks at this place during his 2 visits. It was the place that he would go for rest and recreation. He was very close friends with the man who owned it and his wife, Frank and Betty Leggett. He called Frank Leggett frankincense, and they used to do gymnastics together and so on. They were dear friends. But 14 weeks, so the place is soaked in what Swami Vivekananda left behind. And there are articles there that you can be with and actually touch that Swami Vivekananda was with and handled. The dining table, for example. Anything else from anyone?
Well, the other thing I just remembered is the story of Sri Ramakrishna, like what you are saying about Vivekananda. Sri Ramakrishna gets so mad on Latu Maharaj. One time when he was going to Rambabu's house, he forgot to bring few things that what he uses every hour or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was scolding left and right, and he used the word rascal. And Latu Maharaj just was crying, didn't say a word.
Yes.
The Ram Babu has to intervene and say, forgive him and all these things. So, but Latu Maharaj realized it is all for his good. So this is where the judgment comes. And he never forgot that later.
Oh, no. No. Sri Ramakrishna got angry. He once said to Hridoy was his nephew that lived with him and served him for so many years. He said to Hridoy, when I get angry, you be quiet. When you get angry, I'll be quiet. So, as I said, whatever happens in the moment, it's most auspicious for us to just let it go. Take what we can from it, let it go. Because it's just something else that arose and passed away. And the more we hang on to it, the more distracted we are by something that exists only in our minds.
Yes.
Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. Oh, dearly beloved Lord, lead us from this place of endless change and relentless commotion to thine abode of serenity, silence, and peace. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine being as our mother and father. Any final thoughts from anyone?
Brother Shankara, it was great being back with you today. Thank you to
Oh,
Sevaki. Good to be back.
very good. Oh, good to see you. All right, sisters and brothers. See you again tomorrow for those of you who show up. The talk is Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga.
Thanks, brother.
See you then.
Why? Brother.